10, 9, ignition sequence.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
1, 0, and liftoff.
Mission complete, Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle's earned its place in history and it's come to a final stop.
Eight, 7, 6, second umbilical backs away. Main engine start has been initiated. Main engine start and liftoff. Liftoff of the 47th Progress resupply vehicle to the International Space Station. Good first stage performance being reported. Good roll and pitch program. All thrusters reported to be functioning nominally. 42 seconds into the flight. The Soyuz is delivering 100 tons of thrust from its 4 boosters and single engine. Arcing to the northeast of its launch pad toward an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Coming up on the 1-minute mark into the flight, the velocity already 1,100 miles per hour. All systems reported to be functioning normally. Roll, pitch, and yaw reported to be normal. The Soyuz booster now going through the area of maximum dynamic pressure. You can see the contrails, the vortices off of the rocket. 80 seconds into the flight, everything is nominal. We're about 30 seconds away from the shutdown of the first stage and the jettison of the 4 strap-on boosters. Everything reported nominal from the blockhouse of the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Coming up on the 3-minute mark into the flight. The launch shroud has now been jettisoned. The Soyuz booster traveling at a speed of almost 5,000 miles an hour. We have passed the 3-minute mark into the flight. The second stage or core stage is performing as expected. 3 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Everything proceeding in good fashion as the Soyuz booster rocket is delivering the Progress 47 resupply ship toward its preliminary orbit and the start of a 2-day chase to reach the International Space Station. At the time of launch, the station was traveling 245 miles over the Atlantic Ocean just off the west coast of Africa. A view of the now empty launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. It won't be empty for long, however, as another Soyuz booster will roll out in just a few weeks for the next crew launch to the International Space Station. The remainder of the Expedition 31 crew, Gennady Padalka, Joe Acaba, Sergei Revin, on the Soyuz TMA-04M. 4 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. We're coming up shortly on second stage shutdown and jettison, everything performing normally. All flight parameters continue to come in nominal fashion according to the reports from the blockhouse. We have now had second stage shutdown and separation. The next 4 minutes of flight will be exclusively on the Soyuz third stage. Once again, the launch of the ISS Progress 47 cargo craft occurred on time at 7:50 and 24 seconds a.m. Central Time into virtually cloudless skies at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. You're watching a replay now of the final seconds before main engine ignition and liftoff. This video courtesy of the Russian Federal Space Agency. We've just passed the 6-minute mark into the flight, about 3 minutes of powered flight remaining. And there, just moments ago, this replay showing the main engine ignition and liftoff of the Soyuz booster and the Progress 47 cargo craft. 6.5 minutes into the flight, everything reported normally. Good engine performance, good orientation by the third stage as it continues its flight uphill to deliver the Progress into its preliminary orbit. Very few perturbations reported to the third stage of the Soyuz booster. Good roll, good pitch, good yaw. Reported in telemetry being received at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. You're looking at the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow, which will take over control of the Progress and its trek to the International Space Station following orbital insertion. The Progress and its Soyuz booster third stage now traveling almost 14,000 miles an hour, coming up on the 8-minute mark. Coming up on the 8.5-minute mark into the flight. Roll, pitch, and yaw of the third stage still normal. Everything is on track. The Soyuz booster traveling right down the marks toward its preliminary orbit to deliver the Progress resupply vehicle. And we've had third stage shutdown. Spacecraft separation confirmed. And we've had confirmation of the deployment of the solar arrays and the navigational antennas on the ISS Progress 47 vehicle. A flawless launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Progress now in its preliminary orbit, headed for the International Space Station.
This is Mission Control Houston. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's edition of ISS Update this Friday, April 20th. And now for this week, a look back at this week aboard the International Space Station. On Monday, Expedition 30 Commander Dan Burbank and flight engineers Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin conducted leak checks and other tests on Monday of the Russian Sokol launch and entry suits that they will wear for their departure from the International Space Station and return to Earth aboard the Soyuz TMA-22 spacecraft. The landing about 56 miles north-northeast of the remote town of Arkalyk in Kazakhstan will wrap up Expedition 30 and is scheduled to take place on April 27th. Burbank also performed maintenance work on a pump in the outpost water recovery system. Shkaplerov and Ivanishin cleaned fan screens in the Poisk and Rosviet modules. And with an eye toward the scheduled arrival of the SpaceX Dragon commercial cargo craft, flight engineers Don Pettit and Andre Kuipers spent most of the day rehearsing a rendezvous and Canadarm2 grapple procedures at the Cupola Robotics workstation. Dragon is slated to launch atop a Falcon 9 rocket on April 30th from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, Florida, and the station crew is set to grapple and berth the supply ship on May 3rd. Dragon will be the first commercial cargo vehicle employed to deliver supplies to the complex. Also on Monday, Pettit and Kuipers worked with the space sound experiment in the Japanese Kibo laboratory. One of the pair created sound with a special instrument that was recorded with a video camera and an audio recorder. Flight engineer Oleg Kononenko took photographs of Earth as part of the Russian Uragan Earth imaging program, which is named for the Russian word for hurricane. Uragan is a ground and space-based system for predicting natural and man-made disasters. And on Tuesday, flight engineer Oleg Kononenko transferred trash and station discards to the ISS Progress 46 cargo craft for disposal to prepare for its hatch closure on Wednesday. Its departure set the stage for the arrival of the Progress 47 cargo craft that is now on its way to the International Space Station. Kononenko and flight engineer Anatoly Ivanishin had worked on the installation of a docking mechanism in the Pirs docking compartment to prepare for Sunday's arrival of Progress 47. Also on Tuesday, flight engineer Anton Shkaplerov performed maintenance work on a cooler in the Soyuz TMA-22 spacecraft that brought him, Ivanishin, and Commander Dan Burbank to the station in November. The trio is scheduled to return to Earth April 27 aboard the Soyuz, landing about 56 miles north-northeast of the remote town of Arkalyk in Kazakhstan and wrapping up Expedition 30. Burbank and flight engineer Andre Kuipers focused on unloading cargo from the Eduardo Amaldi. This is the automated transfer vehicle that docked to the aft end of the Zvezda service module on March 28th. It delivered 7.2 tons of food, fuel, and supplies to the orbiting complex. And on Tuesday, flight engineer Don Pettit participated in several biomedical experiments that measure the impacts of long-duration spaceflight on the human body. For the Sprint experiment, Pettit worked with Kuipers to collect ultrasound readings of leg muscles to see how well high-intensity exercise minimizes the loss of muscle mass and bone density that typically occurs in a weightless environment, and also Pettit and Burbank had worked with the Integrated Cardiovascular Experiment, which measures the atrophy of the heart muscle. Investigators used the data from these tests to develop countermeasures to keep the crew healthy. Then on Wednesday, Commander Dan Burbank and flight engineers Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin continued to prepare for their departure and end their stay on April 27th. The first commercial cargo craft to visit the station was also set for launch on April 30th at 12:22 p.m. For its test flight. The SpaceX Dragon capsule will deliver food, experiment gear, and station hardware. After a series of demonstration maneuvers, it will rendezvous with the station to be grappled and berthed to the Harmony node. Flight engineers Don Pettit and Andre Kuipers are training for the arrival of the Dragon capsule. They worked in the cupola and used the Canadarm2 to retrieve Dragon and berth it. That was again on Wednesday. Finally, 3 new crew members were scheduled to arrive at the orbiting laboratory's Poisk Mini Research Module on May 17. Flight engineers Gennady Padalka, Joe Akaba, and Sergei Revin will dock in the Soyuz TMA-04M spacecraft and join Pettit, Kuipers, and Expedition 31 Commander Oleg Kononenko. Then on Thursday, the ISS Progress 46 cargo craft, loaded with trash and unneeded items, undocked from the Piers docking compartment on Thursday as the station flew 245 miles above southeast Russia. A series of separation burns moved the Progress a safe distance away from the station, where its thrusters will be fired for several days next week for a test of radar tracking capability by Russian ground sites. The Progress will be commanded to deorbit on April 28th for destructive re-entry into Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. Also on Thursday, flight engineer Anatoly Ivanishin photographed the departing cargo craft through a window in the Zvezda service module to verify that no seals were missing or damaged on the docking interface of the Progress. To prepare then for the arrival of Progress 47, flight engineers Anton Shkaplerov and Oleg Kononenko spent a few hours on Thursday practicing with the Toru, the Russian telerobotically operated rendezvous system. The Progress is designed to dock automatically via the Kur's automated rendezvous system, but crews can use the Toru to take over the process if difficulties arise. Meanwhile, on Thursday, flight engineer Andre Kuipers focused his attention on the CARD experiment, providing blood and urine samples for later analysis back on Earth, as well as doing a few rebreathing exercises throughout the day. CARD investigates the mechanisms of heart disease and looks at changes in blood pressure during the long-duration spaceflight. Then today, on Friday, it was a successful launch of the Progress 47 cargo craft from Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The new Progress 47, carrying food, supplies, oxygen, and fuel, now on its way to the International Space Station, lifted off on time at 7:50 a.m. this morning. The Progress 47 cargo craft is set to dock to the station this Sunday at 9:40 a.m. Central Time. We'll bring live coverage here on NASA television at 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, that cargo craft is set to dock to the International Space Station at 9:40 a.m. Central Time. Also on Friday, aboard the International Space Station, Commander Dan Burbank and flight engineers Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin prepared for their return to Earth. Burbank, Shkaplerov, and Ivanishin, who launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan aboard their Soyuz TMA-22 last November, are wrapping up their final week aboard the International Space Station as they prepare to return back to Earth on April 27th. The trio suited up into their Centaur suits for a fit check, strapped themselves into their Soyuz TMA-22 spacecraft, and rehearsed descent drills for the return to Earth next week. Meanwhile, flight engineers Don Pettit and Andre Kuipers practiced for the capture of the first commercial spacecraft, known as Dragon, to arrive at the International Space Station. The pair performed 3 grapple practice sessions using the station's Canadarm2 during today's dry run. SpaceX's Dragon is set to launch from NASA's Kennedy Space Center at the end of the month on April 30th. And also today, Station Commander Dan Burbank and Kuipers worked with the onboard ultrasound equipment performing vessel and cardiovascular scans. And flight engineers Anton Shkaplerov and Oleg Kononenko participated in onboard training conference to review docking procedures and in anticipation of the arrival of the new Progress 47, now on its way to the International Space Station, that is set to dock to the orbiting complex this weekend on Sunday at 9:40 a.m. Central Time. Again, live coverage will begin here on NASA television at 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And that's a wrap of this week in space aboard the International Space Station. This is Mission Control Houston.
America's space agency has crowned its vehicular engineering victors for the 19th annual NASA Great Moon Buggy Race at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. The team from Petra Mercado High School in Humacao, Puerto Rico, won first place in the high school division, and racers from the University of Alabama in Huntsville, Team 1, claimed the college division trophy. The winning teams outraced more than 80 teams from 20 states, Puerto Rico, Canada, Germany, India, Italy, Russia, and the United Arab Emirates.
I think there are a number of reasons that I would consider the Great Moon Buggy Race important. Perhaps foremost for me is just the international competition that it brings, the exposure of our kids, not only here in Huntsville, but kids across the United States who have an opportunity to meet students from other parts of the world.
Organized by NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, the race challenges students to design, build, and race lightweight human-powered buggies. Traversing the grueling half-mile course, which simulates the cratered lunar surface, race teams face many of the same engineering challenges dealt with by Apollo-era lunar rover developers at the Marshall Center in the late 1960s. The winning teams post the fastest vehicle assembly and race times in their divisions with the fewest on-course penalties. The race is inspired by the original lunar rover, first piloted across the moon's surface in the early 1970s during the Apollo 15, 16, and 17 missions.
It's wonderful. It's nice being around a bunch of students that are doing the same things we are and been through what we have in the past semester and everything. But just being around engineers doing the same thing we are, being able to relate to them and compete. Competition's always fun.
For more information about the race, visit moonbuggy.msfc.nasa.gov.
Es gibt ja schon ein paar Vorteile, Königin zu sein, zum Beispiel den, einen offiziellen Geburtstag zu haben, jedes Jahr im Juni mit Truppenparade. Da kann man nämlich seinen eigentlichen in aller Ruhe verbringen, zu Hause auf Schloss Windsor, unter Ausschluss der Öffentlichkeit im Kreise der Familie, wie es so schön heißt. Zum letzten Mal waren die beisammen beim Ostergottesdienst. Ansonsten sind die Royals schwer beschäftigt in diesen Tagen. Wir feiern ja das Jahr des diamantenen Thronjubiläums Ihrer Majestät. Neulich in Manchester hatte die Queen sage und schreibe 4 Termine an einem Tag. Aber die Frau wird ja nun stolze 86. Da macht es doch Sinn, die jüngeren Windsors auch mal ranzulassen. So reisten Charles und Camilla jüngst nach Skandinavien. Harry hatte jede Menge Spaß in der Karibik. Prinzessin Anne war auf offizieller Mission in Südafrika. Und die Herzogin von Cambridge wurde sozusagen geadelt mit einem gemeinsamen Auftritt mit der Königin. Auch Prinz Edward und Sophie Wessex sind im Einsatz. Und William und Kate wird man in den nächsten Wochen auch so einige Male zu sehen bekommen. Eine für alle, alle für eine. Und die Queen kann mal in Ruhe Geburtstag feiern.
Dort haben die Proben zum diamantenen Thronjubiläum von Königin Elisabeth II. Begonnen. Am Buckingham-Palast erstrahlt daher seit heute diese Lichtinstallation. Das Porträt der Königin ist aus tausenden kleinen Bildern zusammengesetzt, die von britischen Kindern gemalt wurden. Eigentlich war das 60-jährige Thronjubiläum der Monarchin bereits Anfang Februar, doch die offiziellen Feierlichkeiten sollen am 2. Juni bei hoffentlich schönem Wetter beginnen.
Temperaturen von rund 30 Grad. Hier liegt sie, da liegt natürlich kein Schnee mehr. In Perm, westlich des Ural, der hier verläuft, sind es etwa 18 Grad. Und bei diesen Temperaturen schmilzt der Schnee, die Sie immer noch hier haben teilweise. Man sieht das, es sind keine Wolken, sondern das ist Schnee, schmilzt der Schnee. Schnell davon, also es wird auch Frühling in Russland. Ihnen noch einen schönen Abend und machen Sie es gut.
Wird. Also heute Geburtstag hat, vor 44 Jahren, wurde an einem heißen Tag geboren, zumindest in Köln, 30,8 Grad. Ab 30 Grad gilt ein Tag als heißer Tag. Und selbst auf dem kahlen Asten damals 24,5 Grad. Also auch das ist möglich. Und das erzähle ich Ihnen deswegen, weil ich Ihnen zeigen möchte, dass auch in diesem Jahr die Temperaturen in den kommenden Tagen zumindest, jetzt für Ende April, ordentlich ansteigen. Bis Mittwoch immer noch das gleiche Wetter, was wir gerade gewöhnt sind. Dann aber ab Donnerstag geht es nach oben. Auch hier in Münster über 20 Grad. Und Sie sehen hier immer die Unsicherheiten eingetragen. Die sind naturgemäß groß, wenn man viele Tage vorherschaut. Aber Sie sehen, es ist auch möglich, wenn das Tief noch weiter rauszieht auf dem Atlantik und damit dann noch mehr Warmluft in unsere Richtung ziehen kann, dass es bis 27 Grad raufgeht. Ist noch ein bisschen Glaskugelbereich, ich möchte es nicht übertreiben mit dem Hinweis, aber es geht nach oben in Sachen Temperatur, nur das unmittelbare Wetter bleibt wechselhaft. Und weil Sie es schon gewöhnt sind, können wir das relativ kurz abhandeln. Sie sehen beim Wettervorschaufilm, da geht es weiter mit den Schauern.
Dieser einzigartige Anblick ist nur langjährig ausgebildeten Astronauten vorbehalten. Bisher. Jetzt will dieser Mann ein Ticket zu den Sternen lösen. Als erster deutscher Weltraumtourist.
Es ist was Besonderes, wenn man dann als tatsächlicher Pionier einer der Ersten oder sogar der Erste sein wird, der dann ins All fliegt.
Wir begleiten ihn auf seinem Weg in die Schwerelosigkeit.
Und jetzt geht's durch die Wolkendecke durch, voll direkt in die Sterne.
Ein einzigartiges Erlebnis, das auch diese Männer kaum erwarten können.
Über der Erde zu schweben und auf 6,5 Milliarden Menschen herunterzublicken und zu wissen, du stehst über allem. Und die Erde in all ihrer Schönheit zu sehen, wenn man dann zurück ist, bin ich mir sicher, dass sich der Blickwinkel verändert hat.
Doch bevor es soweit ist, müssen die zukünftigen Astronauten ein mehrtägiges Trainingsprogramm bestehen.
That's great, flying a plane. You're not just flying a plane, you're flying a fighter.
Jos Gahl ist Zahnarzt und vielleicht der erste deutsche Weltraumtourist. Der 39-Jährige will bereits in 2 Jahren im All schweben. Für seinen Traum hat er tief in die Tasche gegriffen. Denn über 70.000 € kostet der Flug mit der niederländischen Firma Space Expedition Curaçao. Training inklusive. Ein Schnäppchen, wenn man bedenkt, dass der weltweit erste Alltourist vor ein paar Jahren noch rund 15 Millionen € gezahlt hat.
Im Vergleich dazu ist es also wesentlich weniger, was ich bezahle. Aber es ist ja nicht nur, wie gesagt, nicht nur dieser Flug, den ich da mitbezahle, sondern eben diese ganzen 2 Jahre vorbereiten. Diese ganzen 2 Jahre, die das Leben ja dann auch ein bisschen anders prägen. Und das ist es mir auch wert.
Einmal Astronaut sein. Diesen Traum haben seit dem 21. Juli 1969 viele Menschen. Damals betritt der Amerikaner Neil Armstrong als erster Mensch den Mond.
Es ist ein kleiner Schritt für einen Menschen, aber ein großer Schritt für die Menschheit.
Schwerelosigkeit im Weltall erleben. Ist das vielleicht bald schon für jedermann möglich?
Es ist an der Zeit, das Weltall für jedermann zugänglich zu machen.
Harry van Hulten ist Mitgründer von Space Expedition Curaçao. Der ehemalige F-16-Kampfjet-Pilot ist bei den Trainings dabei und erklärt den zukünftigen Astronauten den genauen Flugablauf. Das Raumschiff ist ein Zweisitzer, der wie ein Flugzeug direkt vom Rollfeld aus starten kann. Seine 4 Raketentriebwerke werden mit Kerosin und flüssigem Sauerstoff betrieben. Mit einer maximalen Geschwindigkeit von 2,9 Mach, also mehr als 3500 Stundenkilometern, geht es dann senkrecht an den Rand der Erdatmosphäre. Schon nach etwa 4 Minuten Flug in einer Höhe von rund 60 Kilometern werden die Triebwerke abgeschaltet. Das Raumschiff wird dann noch auf etwas über 100 Kilometer Höhe steigen. Hier kann man dann als einziger Passagier etwa 5 Minuten Schwerelosigkeit genießen und den Anblick unseres Planeten. Nach insgesamt 1 Stunde Flug landet das Raumschiff dann wie ein normales Flugzeug dort, wo es gestartet ist, auf der Karibikinsel Curaçao. Dort ist der Luftraum nicht überfüllt wie in Europa, sodass Vertikalstarts möglich sind. Die Firmengründer glauben, dass die Reise ins All bald schon Routine sein wird, mit ganz neuen Möglichkeiten.
Das ist erst der Anfang. Wenn es uns möglich wird, in eine erdnahe Umlaufbahn zu kommen, können wir, genauso wie die ISS, die Erde in 1,5 Stunden umkreisen. Das würde bedeuten, dass wir in 1,5 Stunden von hier nach Tokio fliegen können. Das wäre ein großer Fortschritt.
Der Zahnarzt Jo Skal wird bei seinem Flug nicht in die Umlaufbahn, sondern nur an die Grenze zwischen Atmosphäre und All fliegen. Trotzdem muss er sich einem harten Training unterziehen. Tag 1 beginnt am sogenannten Desdemona-Simulator in den Niederlanden. Es ist der modernste Flugsimulator der Welt, in dem man auch die Belastungen eines Weltraumflugs nachempfinden kann. Durch den Raketenantrieb werden Beschleunigungskräfte, sogenannte G-Kräfte, auftreten. Kräfte, wie man sie auch aus der Achterbahn kennt. Dort werden normalerweise um die 2G erreicht und das auch nur kurz. Beim Trip ins All sind es mehr als doppelt so viel, nicht ohne Risiko.
G-Kräfte führen dazu, dass das Blut aus dem Kopf in den restlichen Körper gepresst wird. Das Erste, was man merkt, ist, dass man einen Tunnelblick bekommt. Das periphere Sehen verschlechtert sich. Die nächste Phase nennen wir Grey-Out. Man ist noch bei Bewusstsein, man hört alles, kann sprechen und klar denken. Nur die Sicht wird grau. Dann kommt der Blackout und der sogenannte G-Lock. Man verliert das Bewusstsein. Das passiert bei einer Belastung von über 5G.
Im Simulator werden bereits 3G erreicht. Das Training wird deshalb von Ärzten begleitet. Ein EKG wird die Herzfrequenz der Teilnehmer während der Flugsimulation überwachen. Nervös ist Jo Skal nicht. Er hat sich vorbereitet.
Ich habe mich ein bisschen zurückgehalten. Ich hatte jetzt so eine Suppe und einen kleinen Salat. Wohlweislich, dass es jetzt gleich losgeht. Und sicher ist sicher.
Die Simulation wird insgesamt knapp 10 Minuten dauern. Dabei wird nicht nur die Herzfrequenz überwacht. Auch über eine Kamera besteht ständiger Kontakt. Im Simulator fühlt Jo Skal nicht nur die Belastungen, sondern sieht auch ein täuschend echtes Video vom Weg ins All.
Jetzt geht's durch die Wolkendecke durch, voll direkt in die Sterne, direkt in das All. Jetzt sind wir draußen, jetzt spüre ich das, es ist so abgefahren.
Doch wie verträgt der zukünftige Weltraumtourist die Belastung von 3G?
Es war einfach cool. Also Magen, gar kein Problem, aber man hat die Arme waren so schwer auf einmal, das war so schwer, ich habe die Hände kaum hochheben können. Also das hat man richtig gespürt, wenn auch nur für ein paar Sekunden. Aber man hat es gespürt und ich musste dann auch wirklich ein bisschen arbeiten.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Here's your badge.
Das erste Training hat er ohne Probleme bestanden. Doch an Tag 2 erwarten ihn noch extremere Belastungen. Auch bei der Konkurrenz, dem wohl bekanntesten zivilen Raumfahrtunternehmen Virgin Galactic, müssen die Teilnehmer mehrere Tage Training überstehen, bevor sie über ein Trägerflugzeug in etwa 15 Kilometer Höhe gebracht werden. Erst hier klingt die Raumfähre sich aus und zündet ihren Raketenantrieb. In wenigen Minuten schießt das Raumschiff ins All. Trotz des stolzen Preises von 150.000 € haben bereits rund 500 Menschen diesen Flug, der 2013 erstmals stattfinden soll, gebucht. Darunter Hollywood-Stars wie Brad Pitt und Ashton Kutcher. Zurück zum Astronautentraining von SpaceX. An Tag 2 geht es in die Luft, und zwar in einem echten Kampfjet.
Bei dem Flug werden 4G erreicht. Das ist schon anspruchsvoller als der Simulator gestern.
Das Fliegen in Kampfjets ist eigentlich Militärs- und Kunstfliegern vorbehalten. Die zukünftigen Weltraumtouristen müssen deshalb zuerst ein Sicherheitstraining durchlaufen. Hier wird der Ernstfall geprobt, der Ausstieg mit dem Schleudersitz.
Wenn wir das Flugzeug verlassen müssen, dann über den Schleudersitz. In diesem Fall müssen wir nur an einem Griff ziehen. Dann sollte der Rest von alleine passieren. Ein Raketenantrieb wird uns aus dem Flugzeug katapultieren, und zwar mit 17 G. Zu diesem Zeitpunkt wird fast jeder bewusstlos sein, um dann hoffentlich wieder aufzuwachen, wenn sich der Fallschirm öffnet. Und dann schweben wir zurück zur Erde.
Das ist wie im richtigen Leben. Man hat nie eine Garantie. Auch wenn man ins richtige Flugzeug steigt, kann alles passieren, theoretisch. Hier ist es natürlich noch ein bisschen verschärfter, logischerweise. Aber ja, das hält mich jetzt trotzdem nicht zurück oder ab, das zu tun.
Dann wird es ernst. Die zukünftigen Astronauten machen sich auf den Weg zum Jet. Mit dabei beim heutigen Training ein russischer Student und ein englischer Börsenhändler. Auch sie wollen sich den Flug ins All auf keinen Fall entgehen lassen.
Wenn man eine Liste mit Dingen hat, die man in seinem Leben gemacht haben möchte, dann gehört das auf jeden Fall dazu.
Wenn man seinen Enkeln eine Geschichte erzählen möchte, ist das wohl die beste. Liebe Enkel, euer Opa ist ein Astronaut. Etwas Besseres gibt es wohl nicht.
Der Flug im Kampfjet ist die nächste Herausforderung auf dem Weg zum Astronauten. Der spätere Flug im Raumschiff soll damit schon einmal geprobt werden. Denn auch hier treten enorme G-Kräfte auf. Wie der Körper darauf reagiert, ist ungewiss. Bei der Beschleunigung kann der Jet 5G und mehr erreichen. Fliegt man eine Parabel, geht die G-Kraft auf 0 zurück. So kann man einige Sekunden Schwerelosigkeit erleben.
As you can feel, and now you feel 0 G's. You feel the inversion. There we go.
Wow, great view. Great view from here.
And you feel yourself light in the air.
Yeah.
That's the 0 G.
Okay, it's a great view.
And now we're going to pick up some speed again. And stand by for some G's.
Nach etwa 30 Minuten mit Geschwindigkeiten von bis zu 700 Kilometern pro Stunde, Belastungen von 5G und ersten Erlebnissen mit der Schwerelosigkeit ist der Zahnarzt Jos Gahl ganz berauscht.
So, wieder zurück auf der Erde. Es war sensationell, fantastisch.
Heute ist er seinem Traum vom Flug ins All einen Schritt näher gekommen.
Ich denke, ich brauche noch ein wenig Training dafür, aber dafür sind ja auch 2 Jahre da. Und ich hoffe, dass ich in 2 Jahren tatsächlich dann von oben die Erde sehen kann. Ja.
Ob er wirklich wie geplant 2014 im Weltraum schweben wird, steht in den Sternen. Bisher gibt es das Raumschiff nur als Animation. Doch auch die Konkurrenz Virgin Galactic fliegt noch nicht. Es gibt also noch die Chance, dass er tatsächlich der erste deutsche Weltraumtourist wird.
What's the promise then? What's this flight experience like that makes it worth $200,000 to go up on this big voyage?
I think that our goal is really to open that space experience, which will be about a 2-hour space experience with about 5 minutes in space, where you get out of your seat, you'll be able to float around, you'll be able to look down at our home planet, and supposedly a very beautiful experience, and then look outward to the Milky Way and look at space. So that's sort of the main components of the experience.
This is a fairly limited demographic, I would imagine, that can afford to do this. And you're looking at, what, 300 to 400 flights a year thereafter?
Yeah, I think, you know, to start, we'll get started at a rate of maybe 50 to 100 flights a year, something like that. We can put 6 people in the vehicle, so we can fly a fair amount of people per flight. But, you know, over time, our aspiration is really to revolutionize space access. So, you know, for 50 years, only sort of the triathlete PhDs have been able to go to space. And they're great people, the astronauts that I know. But what we really want to do is open up space to the rest of us. And we actually think that there's a huge market for that. There are millions of people who can afford something for $200,000, tens of millions of people who can afford something that's a bit less. And so, you know, we think that there's a great market for this.
And so price will come down over time as volume goes up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what time frame it'll be. I think we can stay probably at the $200,000 level for several years, but over time, no doubt, the price will come down and more people will be able to buy tickets.
Now, your base will be in New Mexico in terms of flight launches, but you have the Abu Dhabi Investment Fund, ABAR, as an investor. Eventually, do you see flights from here in Abu Dhabi? Eventually, Sweden showed an interest as well?
Yeah, well, we're very interested in flying from Abu Dhabi at some point. We've had a great partnership with ABAR, who's put a very significant investment into the company and has expressed an interest in bringing us here. That's obviously conditional on regulatory approval from both U.S. and Abu Dhabi authorities. But assuming that we can sort of navigate our way through that, I think it would be very exciting to have literally the first, human spaceflight operation outside of U.S., Russia, and China here in Abu Dhabi.
So just confirm, you're going to get people up in the air by 2013. Do we have a firm date yet for launch?
That's the goal. We're in the middle of test flight right now, and so you can never predict with absolute certainty what's going to happen over the next year. But we're already flying our vehicles. We're sort of well into the development program, and we think we've got a good shot of going into commercial operation by the end of 2013.
Once again, George Whitesides of Virgin Galactic. And that's it for this edition of CNN Marketplace Middle East.
Erhebt schwere Vorwürfe gegen die Besatzung eines Kreuzfahrtschiffes. Wochenlang trieben der Fischer und zwei Freunde in Seenot auf dem Pazifik. Da näherte sich ein US-Passagierschiff und fuhr einfach vorbei, obwohl Kreuzfahrtpassagiere die Besatzung alarmiert hatten. Zwei der Fischer starben später, nur einer überlebte. Nun wird der Vorfall untersucht. Mehr von Carsten Mierke.
Er hat das Drama überlebt, als einziger. 28 Tage trieb Adrian Vasquez nach einem Motorschaden zusammen mit zwei Freunden hilflos über den Pazifik. Und nie wird er Tag 16 vergessen. Da kam ein riesiges weißes Schiff mit roter Farbe an der Seite auf uns zu, sagte in diesem Interview. Mit ziemlicher Sicherheit war es die Star Princess, ein Luxusliner auf Kreuzfahrt. Denn dort an Deck fotografierten 3 Passagiere gerade Seevögel, als sie das kleine Fischerboot in Seenot entdeckten. Einer machte das hier mit seinem Hemd, immer und immer wieder. Es war zwischen Punta Neras in Costa Rica und Manta in Ecuador am 10. März gegen 17 Uhr. Die Vogelliebhaber rennen zur Besatzung, um den Vorfall zu melden, doch nichts geschieht. Die Star Princess setzt ihre Fahrt fort, trotz aller Proteste. Die Reederei erklärt, den Kapitän habe die Nachricht nie erreicht. Möglicherweise sei die Kommunikationskette an Bord unterbrochen worden. Nach geltendem Seerecht jedenfalls wäre die Star Princess zur Hilfe verpflichtet gewesen.
Große Passagierschiffe haben auch ein sogenanntes Fast Rescue Boot. Das ist ein Schnellboot, was immer einsatzbereit ist und sofort zu so einem kleinen havarierten Schiff zufahren kann, um denen Hilfe zu leisten.
Was unterblieb? Noch am Abend des 16. Tages verdurstet der erste, wenige Tage später der zweite. Adrian überlebt mit Regenwasser und fauligem Fisch. Über die Besatzung der Star Princess sagt er nur so viel: Gott wird ihnen nicht vergeben.
Unterwegs im sensiblen Marschland von Louisiana. Ein Naturparadies, die Brut- und Raststätte unzähliger Fisch- und Vogelarten. Doch seit 2 Jahren ist hier nichts mehr so, wie es einmal war.
Tatsache ist, wenn das Öl erst einmal da ist, kann man nicht mehr viel dagegen tun. Man kann das Öl, egal wie sehr man sich anstrengt, nie ganz wegbekommen. Und man kann auch nicht Flora und Fauna davor schützen.
20. April 2010. Die Ölplattform Deepwater Horizon explodiert und reißt 11 Menschen in den Tod. Schätzungsweise 780 Millionen Liter Rohöl strömen fast 3 Monate lang unkontrolliert in den Golf von Mexiko. Öl schwappt an Land. Auch das empfindliche Marschland wird von der giftigen Masse erobert. Die größte Umweltkatastrophe der USA. 2 Jahre danach zeigt uns Naturschützer David Mood die Folgen. Das Öl ist immer noch da, hat sich zwischen den Gräsern teilweise zu Teerflächen verhärtet.
Man sieht immer noch Rohöl tief in der Erde. Es kommt immer wieder an die Oberfläche. Man sieht es an den Grashalmen. Und das ist das Problem. Es ist immer noch da. Es kommt immer wieder hoch, entweder durch Erosion oder durch starke Hitze.
Nur noch Gestrüpp ragt stellenweise aus den einst so fruchtbaren Gebieten. Das Öl hat die Natur erdrückt. Die Folge, das Marschland versinkt rapide im Meer mit fatalen Konsequenzen.
Bevor das Öl diese Insel erreicht hatte, war sie doppelt so groß. Alle toten Äste, die man jetzt sieht, waren vor der Ölpest lebendig, üppig und in einem saftigen Grünton. Betrachtet man die Pelikane, sind es heute nur noch halb so viele.
Seit der Ölpest hat sich Dr. Robichauds Patientenstamm verändert. Die Patienten klagen über merkwürdige Symptome, die sich weder im Blutbild noch sonst irgendwie nachweisen lassen. Darla Rooks ist von Beruf Fischerin. Sie kann nicht mehr.
Sorry. I couldn't cook anymore because I was burning the house.
Ich konnte nicht mehr kochen, da ich beinahe das Haus in Brand gesetzt habe. Ich konnte nicht mehr fischen, ich war zu schwach. Ich fühlte mich, als hätte ich Alzheimer. Ich konnte nichts mehr. Als hätten mich mein Geist und meine Seele verlassen. Es war furchtbar. Ich war wie ein Zombie. Ich konnte mich nicht mehr um meine Familie kümmern.
Gift im Körper, in der Fettschicht entlang der Nerven, so seine Diagnose. Mit einer Entgiftungskur konnte er fast allen Patienten helfen. Viele hatten Kontakt mit dem Rohöl oder den massenhaft eingesetzten Chemikalien, die das Öl zersetzen sollten. Am Anfang litten die Menschen unter Hautausschlägen und Atemwegserkrankungen. Das ist nicht mehr der Fall. Übrig geblieben sind Leute mit extremer Müdigkeit, Kopfschmerzen, Persönlichkeitsveränderungen und Depressionen. Ein trostloses Bild am Hafen von Grand Isle. Normalerweise verarbeiten hier um die 100 Mitarbeiter Krabben. Doch seit der Ölkatastrophe finden Dean Blankards Fischer nicht mehr die große Ausbeute. Sein Geschäft ist um fast 70% eingebrochen. BP hatte ihm zwar seine Ausfälle im Katastrophenjahr beglichen, doch was ist in der Zukunft? Die haben mein Leben zerstört. Ich weiß nicht mehr, was ich machen soll. Das hier war meine Welt. Ich liebe meinen Beruf. Irgendeiner wird dafür bezahlen müssen. Am Strand von Grand Isle nur wenige Touristen. Immer wieder spült das Meer Tierbälle an Land. Keiner weiß, wie viel Öl noch im Golf von Mexiko herumwabert. Offiziell sei das Wasser unbedenklich, der Fisch genießbar, obwohl Umweltschützer andere Erkenntnisse haben.
Studien zeigen, dass sich in einem besonderen Fisch dieser Gegend, dem Killifish, gefährliche Chemikalien nachweisen lassen. Die Jungtiere werden dadurch nachweislich krank. Und die wiederum werden von den Vögeln gefressen oder von anderen Fischen. Und die essen dann wir. Das Gift landet also am Schluss auch bei uns.
Die Natur kämpft mit den Folgen der Ölpest. BP hat zwar schon Milliarden bezahlt für Aufräumarbeiten und Entschädigungen, doch niemand weiß, mit welchen Folgen Mensch und Natur in der gebeutelten Region noch rechnen müssen.
Hinterte die Costa Concordia vor der italienischen Küste. Seitdem streiten die Experten, wie das Wrack am besten geborgen wird. Nun gibt es eine Lösung. Eine Spezialfirma wurde beauftragt, das Schiff in einem Stück zu entfernen. Das ist eine aufwendige und vor allem langwierige Methode.
Monatelang haben Taucher einzelne Wrackteile aus der Costa Concordia geholt. Nun soll eine US-Spezialfirma das gekenterte Kreuzfahrtschiff abtransportieren, und zwar in einem Stück. Bis zuletzt hatten Experten über eine geeignete Bergung diskutiert. Im Gespräch war auch, das Wrack zu zerlegen. 12 Monate wird die US-Firma Titan Salvage nun die Bergung der Costa Concordia vorbereiten. Mithilfe von Kränen wollen die Spezialisten das Wrack aufrichten. Das Wasser im Rumpf soll abgepumpt werden. Schließlich sollen Schlepper das havarierte Kreuzfahrtschiff in einen Hafen abtransportieren. Bereits Anfang Mai könnten die Arbeiten beginnen. Es ist das erste Mal in der Geschichte, dass so etwas probiert wird. Das größte Schiff, das bislang auf diese Weise geborgen wurde, hatte nur ein Fünftel der Masse der Costa Concordia. Seit Mitte Januar liegt das Schiff nun vor der toskanischen Insel Giglio auf einem Felsvorsprung. Alltag für die Inselbewohner, doch sie fürchten, dass im Sommer die Touristen wegbleiben könnten. Eine Sorge, die nicht unbegründet ist. Das Schiff gehört hier nicht hin. Es ist einfach nicht das, wofür Giglio bekannt ist. Die Reederei Costa will Bergungsmitarbeiter, Ausrüstung und Material deshalb auf dem Festland unterbringen. Taucher sollen den Meeresboden nach dem Abtransport des Wracks säubern und neu bepflanzen. Nichts soll an das erinnern, was hier Mitte Januar geschehen ist. Die Costa Concordia rammte bei einem riskanten Manöver vor der Insel Giglio einen Felsen. Das Schiff neigte sich zur Seite, kenterte schließlich. 30 Menschen kamen ums Leben, darunter 12 Deutsche. 2 Opfer werden immer noch im Wrack vermutet.
Mexikos größter aktiver Vulkan, der Popocatépetl, gibt keine Ruhe. Der rund 5.500 Meter hohe Feuerberg droht auszubrechen. Am Wochenende kam es erneut zu mehreren kleinen Eruptionen. Mexikos Präsident Calderón rief die Bevölkerung dazu auf, sich auf eine eventuelle Evakuierung vorzubereiten.
Straight ahead, Mari, where are you? I can't see you, but
I'm here. I'm
all right. There you are.
I'm still laughing about those pods because you know that there's like a manager somewhere thinking, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, we always think no. Just think no.
I would think no. Yeah, I've never been in a tanning bed, one of those tanning things, and I don't think I would, just the whole enclosed thing. Anyway, let's go ahead. You know, you might want to try to find a way to get a tan across parts of Europe. It's still very windy, very wet, and this is the same weather system that has been sticking around already, since Thursday? And even though the winds have eased up somewhat, it's still quite windy as we head into parts of the UK and then back over toward France and northern Portugal and Spain, and the travel delays are still there. We haven't seen too much of a change across some of these areas, and notice even here farther to the south. So what's going to happen here? We have this very persistent storm that has been hanging around. Temperatures feel like winter. 7 degrees only in London right now, only 8 in Paris, 10 in Munich. Notice even as we head to areas farther to the south, Madrid, you're only at 15. So this is some of the cooler temperatures that we've had in quite a long time and for a prolonged period of time. So there's that low. This one will begin to start, I should say, to fizzle out just a little bit as we head through the next 24 hours. But we haven't seen too much of a change in our weather pattern here. That jet stream continues to kind of dip down farther to the south. So guess what? Another one is coming down the pike here. A next weather system takes a similar path to what we had now. So not too many changes. Even though one will get out, another one will come in. And here in the U.S., record-setting snowfall across portions of the Northeast. We'll be talking more about that in the coming hours. Back to you.
All right, Mari, thank you very much for that. You are watching World One. Broadcasting live from Hong Kong, you're back watching Newsstream. Now, debris from last year's tsunami in Japan is starting to appear on the other side of the ocean. Now, one of the items was a football found by a beachcomber in Alaska. David Baxter, seen here with his wife, noticed the Japanese characters written on it. And his wife was able to translate the name of a school in an area that was hit by the tsunami. And with that information, they were able to track down its owner, a grateful 16-year-old.
I didn't even imagine that my soccer ball would reach Alaska, thousands of kilometers away from Japan. It is my treasure. I was to transfer to another school after 3rd grade, and my homeroom teacher and classmates gave the ball to me. It has been hard to find my own belongings after the earthquake, but I'm very happy that my soccer ball has been found and is coming back to me.
Baxter plans to return the ball to its owner in Japan, over 3,000 miles away. It's an incredible story of discovery, but also about tsunami debris. And that's something Mari Ramos has been tracking for a long time now. She joins us live from the World Weather Center. Mari.
It's amazing that they were able to find that piece of, that piece from Japan all the way across the sea there in Alaska, but we're going to see probably more of situations like this. A couple of weeks ago, we had that so-called ghost ship, remember, that they found off the coast of Canada that was eventually sank by the U.S. Coast Guard. Now, when you track the debris, it's very difficult because, of course, everything is moving so swiftly. This is a model from NOAA that kind of shows us year by year how much debris is expected to actually move across the ocean. And during year 1, it was expected to be across the middle portion of the Pacific. That's the red. Year 2 is the orange, and year 3 is the yellow. And you can see already by year 1 here we continue to see that, and then by year 2 approaching the coast of Canada and the U.S. And then by year 2, 3, and 4, we begin to see that starting to kind of swirl around along this giant ocean gyre here, these ocean currents carrying it back again toward the central portion of the Pacific Ocean. So This is going to be something to monitor very closely. In just a little while, I'm going to go ahead and tweet you the address again. But there's a marine debris tracker, and they want your help. If you see any kind of marine debris from the tsunami or from anywhere else, there's an app for that, and I'll go ahead and send you that information in just a moment. Mari Ramos CNN is my Twitter handle. Let's go ahead and move on. I want to take you staying in Asia, and the dust storms again. Huge problem. I want to show you these amazing pictures from the weekend of what was happening. Yeah, cover your eyes, your nose, your eyes. This is not going to be pretty. Winds close to 200 kilometers per hour in some cases as this fierce storm was just moving through this area, causing huge travel delays and, of course, making it very uncomfortable. Where does all of this come from? Let me go ahead and show you right over here from the Taklamakan Desert, right here in northwestern China. This is an area, it's very dry, of course. It's a desert. Call it a dune field. It's about 32 kilometers long, and it gets less than 85 millimeters of rainfall every single year, so it's extremely dry. When you have these dust storms that move through this main source area of the desert, you get these very strong winds that come through, and then that will bring the dust all across this region here, and it doesn't only affect northwestern China. These small particles can be suspended in the air for a very long time, and sometimes they can even cross to the other side of the world, all the way across northeastern China, through the Korean Peninsula, through Japan, and cross some of those extreme distances all the way across to even into the Pacific Northwest here of the U.S. So we're all connected, Christy. Back to you.
Oh, we are indeed. Mari Ramos there. Thank you. Take care.
Wie man auf unserer Animation sehen kann, da kommen tatsächlich hier die Sommerwerte angerauscht, die tatsächlich zum Wochenende dann bei uns reinrücken. Allerdings im Süden und Osten und tatsächlich Samstag 28 Grad und mit etwas Glück werden stellenweise sogar 30 Grad erreicht. Naja, so, das ist alles noch ein bisschen Zukunftsmusik, denn morgen sieht es doch leider noch mal nach typischem Aprilwetter aus.
Eastern United States, from Washington, New York to Boston. A nasty system expected to take down trees, cause significant power outages. Let's bring in Mari Ramos now from the International Weather Center. You know, we've been talking about how hot it's been over the last few months, and then this blows in.
That's right. Even here for us in the deep south, temperatures this morning, some of the coldest that we've had in quite a while. Time to pull out those jackets that we never used throughout the winter almost. But no snow here, but it has been quite messy across the northeastern U.S. Now, we're talking about record-setting snow possible across some of these areas. Look at some of these totals so far. 15 centimeters there in upstate New York. Rainfall totals over 70 millimeters of rain, just neighboring Newark there. And then in New York City proper, winds close to 90 kilometers per hour. That's pretty significant stuff. Let's go ahead and roll the video of the snow once again. When we talk about snow in the Pennsylvania area, like the ones that you're seeing over here, it has been very significant. They may get up 8, maybe 10 inches of snow, and this hasn't happened since they've been keeping records. The record was about 4.5, maybe 5 inches of snow in the middle of April. Here we are almost at the end of the month, and this big winter storm pokes its head through the really warm weather that we've had. Come back over to the weather map over here. This is what it looks like on the radar. If you're traveling to the areas in the northeast, expect significant travel delays today. This is causing a lot of problems for travelers in this area. Notice we get rain on one side, and on the back side of this, that's where the snow is coming down quite heavily. The area of low pressure will continue racing across through the north and east. It should be pretty much out of our hair by this time tomorrow, but there's enough cold air in place to bring that moisture down in the form of snow, and a heavy snowfall that it has been. The winter storm warnings also remain in place across this entire region. I want to update you on another story of not a winter storm looking thing, but definitely looking like a problem, I think, across western parts of Europe over the next couple of days. Winds have been pretty strong, 40-kilometer-per-hour winds. As you head right out into the water, we've seen winds gusting over 100 kilometers per hour. That's very significant. And the most significant part is that it's been happening already for the better part of the weekend, so we haven't seen much of an improvement. This area of low pressure will move on through. We'll have another one coming in, so those very strong winds are expected to continue over this area. A little bit of a break tomorrow, and then round 2 comes back in. So high wind, high waves, and also, at times, some heavy rain. Back to you, Michael.
A lot of drama going on out there in the world, isn't there? My goodness.
Always.
Keeping you out of mischief. Have a listen to this story, too, because you've talked a lot about how debris from the tsunami in Japan last year was moving across, and you know better than me on the sort of tidal moves and all of that that's done it. Have a look at this, though. One of the items that has turned up is a football found by a beachcomber in Alaska. I can come back and you tell me how it got there. David Baxter, seen there with his wife, noticed the Japanese characters written on the football. His wife was actually able to translate the name of a school in an area that was hit by the tsunami, and with that information, they were able to track down its owner, a grateful 16-year-old. Easy to do, is it, Murray? Only got a couple of seconds, but...
Not easy to do at all. And you know what? NOAA, the agency here in the U.S., they want to know if you see any debris. At Debris Tracker. Go on there, debristracker.gov, and there's an app for your phone. If you see any tsunami debris, you can report it.
Oh, there's an app for everything. Murray, good to see you. There's probably a Murray Ramos app out there
Don't
somewhere.
give him any ideas.
Well, that'll do it for us here at the International Desk. Thanks to Murray and all our correspondents around the world. I'm Michael Holmes. Global Exchange up next after a quick check of the headlines right here on CNN.
So again, you're watching the onboard camera of this Progress 47 spacecraft as it is on final approach, just about to cross 100 meters.
0.60. And the target is in the Echo Center. Retrograde burn by depot and work. The range is about 90, and I can see that the crosshairs are aligned. Copy.
The visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control Houston confirming that the Core's rendezvous system antenna has been retracted. Computers on board the Progress now taking over for the final stages of this approach.
Approaching range of 30. Copy. Standing by for MCC go to activate operation. We copy, but we're not go yet. I understand. Standing by. Crosshairs are aligned, and the target is within the 1 degree of the center. Copy. Олег, we'll switch to S-band in about a minute and a half. Okay, we'll go, and we have you loud and clear. Range is 6. Antenna retracted. Messages received, and buzz AR messages received. Copy. The crosshairs are aligned, and the target is a little to the left and to the bottom, but within the 1 degree range of the center of Wico. Everything's nominal. Okay, and you will feel a little vibration, so don't worry. Copy. The target is at the center. And now it's going up and to the right. The range is about 4. Copy.
Again, just moments away now from the docking of this Progress 47 spacecraft to the Piers docking compartment, which is just above our field of view right now. You can see the crosshair lining up there as they bring it in for this final approach.
Center of Wico. The lighting is good. Crosshairs are aligned. Copy. A little bit of a roll. Copy. A little bit of a roll. Approaching 3 meters. Copy.
And flight controllers now standing by for contact and capture, as this Progress spacecraft is just moments away from docking.
1 degree of the center, and the crosshairs are aligned. 3 meters, everything's nominal. Copy. And the little bit of a roll still there. 2 meters, copy 2. One meter. Copy meter. The target is at the center. Crosshairs aligned. Copy. Contact. Copy contact. Capture.
Contact and capture confirmed at 9:39 a.m. Central Time.
Anton, how is the comm quality? Do you want to switch to Space to Ground 1? Yes, let's do that.
The two spacecraft docked while flying just over northern China, just south of the Mongolian border, about 249 statute miles above the Earth's surface.
Clear, Hummy. Loud and clear.
Good morning and welcome to Mission Control Houston. We're inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where this team is monitoring systems aboard the station and following along with the activities of the Expedition 30 crew living and working on board the complex. Half of the crew on board the space station is focusing on its return to Earth after 5.5 months in space. That includes Expedition 30 Commander NASA astronaut Dan Burbank and cosmonauts Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin. Those crew members are in the midst of a review of procedures for their undocking and return to Earth, which is scheduled for this Friday. Shkaplerov is the commander of the Soyuz TMA-22 spacecraft that brought the crew members to the station in November and will be returning them to Earth. The other 3 crew members on board the station are focusing on some maintenance work and unpacking and relocating some equipment. That includes NASA astronaut Don Pettit, cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko, and European Space Agency astronaut Andrei Kuipers. Some of the equipment being relocated today has to do with the cargo that was delivered on the European Space Agency's Automated Transfer Vehicle 3, Eduardo Amalde. Pettit is working on moving some of that cargo from its temporary stowage place as it was offloaded from that vehicle. It was placed inside the station, and now items are being unpacked and placed in their final locations. And then packing foam and bags are being returned to that cargo vehicle for later disposal. The crew members are also relocating some of the food on board the station to help with the storage of cargo. Moving some from the Unity node area into the storage module, the pressurized module attached to the station. Crew members are also participating in experiments, they themselves being participants in research on humans and living in space, collecting biological samples, and then also collecting data from experiments that are operating on board the station for return to Earth to the scientists monitoring those experiments also on the ground. The crew members will spend much of this week getting ready for 3 of them returning to Earth, reviewing procedures, and on Wednesday, Burbank will be handing over command of the space station to Kononenko. And then Expedition 31 will officially begin when the Soyuz crew departs the station on Friday. The change of command ceremony on Wednesday will air live on NASA television at 2 p.m. Central Time, and the crew will be departing the station early Friday morning with coverage planned for that series of events, also with the crews bidding each other farewell as the Soyuz crew gets inside its vehicle and closes the hatch overnight, Thursday into Friday morning. And then the crew inside the Soyuz gets ready for undocking, which is scheduled in the early morning hours Friday morning U.S. time. That coverage begins at 3 a.m. Central Time on Friday. Following that, we'll come back with coverage for the deorbit burn and landing of the Soyuz, with that coverage scheduled to begin at 5:30 a.m. Central Time, and the crew and its Soyuz scheduled to land in Kazakhstan at 6:45 a.m. Central Time on Friday.
They call it the Dreamliner because it's meant to help you forget the rain as you head for sunnier climes. It looks like a normal plane, but the design is radically different. Not because of the cockpit or because it's the fastest or the biggest. No, you only get a clue when you give it a knock. The body of the plane isn't made of metal. It's actually made of a combination of carbon fibre and plastic. This is the kind of stuff they use to make Formula One racing cars. Now, crucially, that makes the aeroplane a lot lighter. Boeing says, as a result, it uses 20% less fuel.
With the jet set, the 747 is a giant among aircraft.
This is probably the last Boeing that caused such a fuss, the jumbo jet. But back then, they didn't know if the future was about size or speed.
Soon, the world's airlines will have to choose between supersonic planes like Concorde with limited payloads or the slower liners of the stratosphere like the jumbo jet.
In fact, it's become about saving fuel. Boeing's great rival, Airbus, is also building its own lightweight jet. The Dreamliner hasn't had an easy ride. It's 3 years late, and they've had to fix a flaw in the radical new fuselage. But is it better for passengers?
I think we've really pushed the boundaries with this aircraft. And we talked to our customers. It was all about reducing jet lag. And as you said, the humidity in the aircraft, the fact that it's much bigger, will help reduce jet lag.
It handles like a dream. It is amazing to fly.
Okay, and where's the autopilot?
The autopilot is located in this area. Right now you can see the autopilot button is on.
Yeah, I'm glad about that. Virgin and British Airways also have planes on order, so Dreamliners, the carbon fibre plane, will soon be a common sight in our skies. Richard Westcott, BBC News, 22,000 feet over Manchester.
And these auroras. Our Ramos has all the details coming up next. Welcome back. Now, storms dump heavy rain and bring hurricane-force winds to parts of Western Europe. Let's get details now with Mari Ramos. She joins us from the World Weather Center. Mari.
Yeah, this storm system has kind of lingered here for quite a while, Christy. It is still continuing to bring some very strong winds, but I think the strongest, at least for now, have eased up. These are some of the numbers that we have from the last 24 hours. In Le Talut, they had almost 130 km/h winds. Think about it, 120 is the threshold. Above 120 is considered hurricane force. So this very strong weather system, not only did it bring wind, but also very heavy rain, and you can see that here across southern parts of the UK. Well, by the way, there are still some advisories there because of some heavy rain. Like I was saying, the winds are starting to ease up just a little bit throughout the day today, but don't let your guard down just yet. Definitely not a good beach day again. We're going to see very high winds and very high waves all along this area, from the channel here all the way down to the Bay of Biscay. In some cases, we could see waves 3 to 4 meters crashing on shore, and then in some winds as high as 100 km/h. This is what satellite image looks like. We have one weather system here. There's that in-between quote-unquote break that I was telling you about. Definitely some cooler temperatures with that air getting pulled, I should say, from the north into some of these southerly areas. And then here comes our next weather system. And with this one, this next system that is in line here, we are again going to see some pretty intense weather. That heavy rain, again, pounding areas of southern parts of the UK, also parts of Ireland, and in some cases over 50 millimeters of rain are possible. Expect significant travel delays and wind up to 100 km/h, and not just on shore. Some of those advisories are well inland along the mountains here of northern Spain. So this is pretty significant and definitely something you want to be keeping an eye out for. Temperature-wise, as I was saying, it was still remaining a little bit on the cooler side, especially for this late in the season. Let's go ahead and move on. I very quickly want to update you on the weather situation across East Asia. Now, we still have some reports of blowing sand and dust coming in from that system that we had over the weekend, so a lot of that's still coming in behind this weather system here. For Beijing proper, we've actually had some rain, some misty conditions, and in some cases even moderate rain being reported. Still some cloud cover sticking around. I don't think you'll see a problem with dust in this particular area, but we'll be monitoring this as it continues to move toward the east. Now, there is something else that we want to talk about, and that is the heavy rain. In some cases, localized flooding will be a concern across the Korean Peninsula, back toward West western Japan as we head into Wednesday. So keep an eye out for that as we head through the next 24 hours. Let's go ahead and check out your forecast next. Digging out and cleaning up from the wet, heavy snow that fell across portions of the eastern United States. These pictures all the way from North Carolina. So we're really talking about the deep south, in some cases getting some very heavy snowfall. Across the Northeast, it was even worse, about half a meter of snow falling in parts of Pennsylvania, power outages, and of course, lots of road closures. How about a storm system of a different kind? This one, a geomagnetic one. Whew, I love these pictures, Christy. These taken overnight tonight, actually, or just a few hours ago in Minnesota. Now, this is happening, of course, because we had a solar flare just a couple of days ago. It was huge, remember? But it wasn't pointed toward Earth. So we're just getting kind of sideswiped by it. And there is a G2, geomagnetic level 2 storm system in place right now. And that has given us these amazing northern lights. Now, if you are watching from one of the higher latitudes, I want to tell you, you may want to keep your eyes open overnight tonight. Now, the southern extent of the possibility for lights is this line that you see right over here. That would include northern parts of the UK, parts of central Scandinavia, Alaska, the northern tier here of the US, so maybe even as far south as New York. Not New York City, but New York State. We could see some auroras. And keep an eye out in New Zealand and Tasmania. Maybe, just maybe. Back to you, Christy.
Yeah, those are amazing pictures. No filter added.
Nope.
I mean, amazing visuals of the auroras in the sky. Myra Ramos there. Thank you for the share. Now let's go over. After the end of the shuttle program, America desperately needed some new astro excitement. So what does the U.S. unleash to secure its status in the space race? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it a new breed of super shuttle? Nope, it's actually just a bird, a rubber bird. Meet Camilla, the mascot of NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory. Now, this chicken proved she wasn't chicken as a group of California high school students blasted her 40 kilometers into the stratosphere attached to a helium balloon. And her mission was to measure the effect of the biggest solar radiation storm since 2003. And according to NASA, she carried 4 cameras, a cryogenic thermometer, and 2 GPS trackers. And all this was packed inside a lunchbox, which thankfully did not contain fried chicken when it parachuted back to Earth. And that is Newsstream, but the news continues at CNN. World Business Today is next.
Sommer 2011. Noch nichts deutet darauf hin, dass das Leben von Jutta und Günther Baumgartl bald im wahrsten Sinne des Wortes erschüttert wird. Filmen und tauchen, das tun sie am liebsten. Mit einer Tauchbasis auf der Kanareninsel El Hierro haben sie ihre Leidenschaften zum Beruf gemacht. Die schönsten Tauchgebiete liegen direkt vor ihrer Haustür. Der Meeresnationalpark vor dem Städtchen La Restinga ist ein Unterwasserparadies. Obwohl Günther hier fast jeden Tag taucht, langweilig wird ihm nie. Doch schon bald wird er seine Lieblingsplätze nicht wiedererkennen. Was die Taucher nicht ahnen: unter ihnen braut sich etwas zusammen. Leichte Erdbeben erschüttern über Wochen die Insel, mehrmals am Tag. Günther wird nie vergessen, wie sie sich beim Tauchen anfühlen.
Durch die bessere Leitfähigkeit des Wassers hat man ein richtiges Vibrieren am Körper empfunden und hinterher wie ein Grollen von einem Tonner, der gewesen ist.
Alles deutet auf einen baldigen Vulkanausbruch hin. Kein Wunder, schließlich sind die Kanarischen Inseln nichts anderes als erloschene Vulkane. Überall findet man die Spuren der Millionen Jahre langen feurigen Geschichte der Inseln, wie diese uralten, erkalteten Lavaströme. Vom Juli 2011 an erschüttern tausende Erdstöße El Hierro. Offenbar steigt Magma aus der Tiefe auf. Eine Armada von Wissenschaftlern zieht es auf die Insel der 1000 Vulkane. Sie alle versuchen vorherzusagen, was geschehen wird. Aber die Ereignisse sind unberechenbar. Zum Herbst hin wird die Situation schließlich kritisch.
Todo empezó con una serie de terremotos que tenían un carácter anómalo.
Die Menge der Erdbeben war wirklich ungewöhnlich. Anfangs waren es 20 bis 30 täglich, dann sogar 500 Beben pro Tag. Viel davon hat die Bevölkerung auch gespürt. Es gab auch andere Phänomene, zum Beispiel wurde die ganze Insel einige Zentimeter hochgehoben.
Das Dorf La Restinga wird evakuiert. Auch Jutta und Günther müssen ihr Haus verlassen. Die Behörden müssen vorsichtig sein. Unter El Hierro hat sich eine große Magmakammer gebildet. Unaufhörlich strömt geschmolzenes Gestein zur Erdoberfläche. Aber die große Tiefe, in der es brodelt, macht genaue Vorhersagen unmöglich. Wie heftig wird eine Eruption werden? Wo wird der Vulkan ausbrechen? Vielleicht mitten im Dorf? Mitte Oktober ist es schließlich soweit. Der Vulkan bricht aus. Im Meer. Erleichterung, denn der Lavastrom erreicht die Insel nicht. Der Ausbruch bleibt ein Naturspektakel. Die Geschehnisse in 1000 Meter Tiefe zu filmen, ist gefährlich. Forschern ist es hier einmal bei einem ähnlichen Ausbruch gelungen. Für die Menschen harmlos, ist der Vulkan für das Leben im Meer tödlich. Tonnenweise Fische kommen um durch Sauerstoffmangel und giftige Gase. Günther befürchtet, seine Existenzgrundlage, der Meeresnationalpark, ist zerstört. Die pflanzenfressenden Fische sind tot, deshalb breiten sich Algen ungehindert aus. Das Hafenbecken von La Restinga ist unter einem dicken Algenteppich begraben. Den Wissenschaftlern bietet dagegen der unterseeische Vulkanausbruch ungeahnte Möglichkeiten. Sie können Einzigartiges beobachten. Über dem Vulkan treiben große Lavabrocken. Sie sind hohl und mit heißem Gas gefüllt. Nach einer Weile saugen sie sich mit Wasser voll und versinken. Einige werden von den Forschern eingefangen. Sie messen im Inneren Temperaturen von über 400 Grad. Zum Teil enthalten sie geschmolzenen Meeresboden und Reste toter Organismen. Die Steine sind den Wissenschaftlern unbekannt und bekommen daher einen eigenen Namen, Restinolitos. Sonarmessungen zeigen, durch den Ausbruch entsteht keine neue Insel, nur ein Unterwasserberg, hier rot, denn riesige Mengen Lava sind in die beige gefärbten Tiefen abgeflossen, statt aus dem Wasser zu wachsen. Nach rund 140 Tagen verebbt der Lavastrom. La Restinga kann aufatmen. Zurzeit quellen nur noch kleine Mengen Lava und Gase aus dem Vulkan. Die Behörden haben den Ausbruch offiziell für beendet erklärt. Aber was ist mit dem Leben im Meer? Wie wird der Marinen-Nationalpark jetzt aussehen? Nach der Eruption brennt Günther darauf, das ehemalige Unterwasserparadies in Augenschein zu nehmen. Eine Schicht aus vulkanischer Asche und zersetzter Algen liegt über dem Meeresgrund. Die ersten Tiere, die Günther entdeckt, fressen den dichten Algenbewuchs ab. Seehasen genannte, etwa 30 cm lange Nacktschnecken haben den Ausbruch offenbar unbeschadet überlebt. Ebenso Krebse, Tintenfische und Anemonen.
Die Fische kommen wieder zurück. Natürlich ist die Jahreszeit des Jungfisches. Mit dem Jungfisch, der draußen in großer Tiefe zur Welt kommt, kommen natürlich auch die Jäger und mit den Jägern der Rest.
Der Vulkanausbruch vor El Hierro erwies sich glücklicherweise als harmlos. Existenzen hat er dennoch zerstört. Denn aus Angst blieben die Touristen fern. Doch dafür gibt es keinen Grund. Statistisch betrachtet wird es bis zum nächsten Ausbruch 40 Jahre dauern.
Neuer Starttermin. Der erste private US-Raumtransporter soll am 7. Mai zur internationalen Raumstation ISS starten. Die Reise war zuvor mehrfach verschoben worden. Das zuständige Unternehmen hatte mehr Zeit zum Testen der Andocksysteme benötigt. Zunächst soll eine unbemannte Kapsel vom Weltraumbahnhof Cape Canaveral in Florida auf den Weg geschickt werden.
This is Mission Control Houston with the ISS update for today, Tuesday, April 24th, to update the activities on board the International Space Station and the Expedition 30 mission. The team here in Mission Control Houston is watching over systems aboard the station and not working any major issues at this time. All is functioning well as the crew members work through the mid-afternoon of their day on board the complex. European Space Agency astronaut Andrei Kuipers just completed an event speaking with students around Europe through the European Space Agency and the Spaceship Earth program. He spoke with students that were located in the Netherlands, Germany, Spain, and the United Kingdom. Following that event, Kuipers is due to go back to working with NASA astronaut Don Pettit on some training at the robotics workstation aboard the complex. There's a workstation inside the cupola module and also in the Destiny lab where they can operate the space station's robotic arm, Canadarm2. And they are going through some training and reviewing procedures for operating that arm to latch onto or grapple the SpaceX Dragon cargo capsule. They've been refreshing their training on that procedure in preparations for that cargo vehicle and its first flight to the International Space Station, and they'll continue with that training, although SpaceX announced on Monday that the launch will be delayed from the target of April 30th. In a statement, it was cited that SpaceX needed more time to finish hardware-in-the-loop testing and properly review and follow up on all the data, and that it would be wise to push the launch likely about a week, and that date will be coordinated with NASA and set soon. And elsewhere on board the space station, crew members are getting ready to return to Earth in another vehicle that is at the station, the Soyuz spacecraft that brought Expedition 30 commander NASA astronaut Dan Burbank and cosmonauts Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin to the complex. They arrived at the station in November and will be returning to Earth on Friday. So they are packing up equipment for its return in the Soyuz along with them, and doing some adjustments to a specialized seat liner fitted for a crew member inside the Soyuz. In dealing with another vehicle at the station, astronaut Don Pettit was continuing to unpack cargo that was delivered by the European Space Agency's automated transfer vehicle, the third ESA cargo vehicle delivered to the station, called Eduardo Amalde. After all that cargo is unloaded into the station, it has to be unpacked and put in its final location. So Pettit has been working on that for a couple days. And Kuipers is working with setting up an experiment so that he can participate in that later this week. It's called VO2 Max, and it studies the effects of living in a microgravity environment on the astronauts, looking at the oxygen uptake, or how their bodies breathe in the oxygen while they're exercising. And astronaut Dan Burbank also participated in an educational activity, an amateur radio pass, or ham pass, with students in Italy today.
In 10 Jahren sollen Roboter damit beginnen, rohstoffreiche Asteroiden auszubeuten. Schon bald will die Firma ein Raumschiff zur Erkundung ins All schicken. Es soll herausfinden, welche Himmelskörper in Frage kommen. Gesucht wird vor allem nach seltenen Metallen, wie zum Beispiel Platin.
Das Ganze wird in 3 Phasen stattfinden. Als erstes müssen wir die Asteroiden aussuchen. Als zweites entwickeln wir die Technologien, um die wertvollen Rohstoffe aus den Asteroiden extrahieren zu können. Und drittens müssen wir die Rohstoffe dahin bringen, wo sie gebraucht werden. Das kann ein Depot in Erdnähe sein oder sonst irgendwo im All. Geldgeber für das ehrgeizige Projekt sind übrigens unter anderem die Google-Milliardäre Larry Page und Eric Schmidt sowie Hollywood-Legende James Cameron. In 10 Jahren will Planetary Resources soweit sein, die Bodenschätze im All zu heben.
Ich denke, es geht. Aber es bedeutet sehr viel Forschung und technologische Entwicklungen, bevor das machbar ist.
Und so drängen immer mehr private Unternehmen ins Weltall, während staatliche Raumfahrtprogramme immer weniger Geld zur Verfügung haben. Bleibt die Frage, wem gehört das All eigentlich? Ist es rechtlich überhaupt legitim, aus ihm Kapital zu schlagen?
Our first step really is going to be to process these resources, water in particular, which is propellant rocket fuel, in fuel depots that will remain in space and be accessible to government partners, private industry that's doing Earth, Moon, or Earth, Mars transportation. And then, of course, after that, beginning to bring strategic metals and minerals back to Earth.
The idea may seem far-fetched, more suited to the realm of science fiction than financial investment. However, Planetary Resources wants to convince us that their idea isn't as crazy as it sounds.
Just 10 years ago, Peter and I just started Space Adventures, and before that time, no private citizens had been to space. Since then, we have a number of people pay $50 million to visit the space station. We have billions of dollars invested in private capital in space tourism. We've got a number of thousands of people sign up for suborbital flights. And let's be clear, resources and energy is an industry that's 100 times bigger than tourism.
Gold, spices, timber, oil, all of these kind of commodities are resources that we've crossed continents to acquire throughout the course of history. So maybe travelling to the universe, well, to another universe indeed for new resources isn't such a stretch to think about after all. And on that note, I'm afraid to say it's time to say goodbye for the rest of us from World Business Today, at least for this early edition. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Nina Dos Santos in London.
Well, new company, it's called Planetary Resources, sees an opportunity in asteroids. It wants to mine them for water and platinum and claims a space rock like this one could be worth tens of billions of dollars. Now, here's how it works in theory. Now, the company plans to launch a fleet of space-traveling robots. Those robots will then seek out asteroids with the right stuff.
In this next 2 to 5, 6 years, we're really focused on building our ARCID series of spacecraft, the 100, 200, and 300 series, which are going to be, first of all, imaging these near-Earth approaching asteroids to identify which are the ones that we want to go after, and then ultimately going out to them to place beacons, to do the full reconnaissance, to understand their makeup, and then ultimately is going to be the prospecting to begin to get resources. Our first step really is going to be to process these resources, water in particular, which is propellant rocket fuel, in fuel depots that will remain in space and be accessible to government partners, private industry that's doing Earth, Moon, or Earth, Mars transportation, and then, of course, after that, beginning to bring strategic metals and minerals back to Earth.
Now, that last stage remains a bit hazy. Now, the company has not said how it plans to mine the asteroids, and its co-founders admit they still need to develop some of the necessary technology, but they are convinced they're on the right path.
Every aspect of human exploration ever, whether it was the Europeans heading to the Americas or the early American settlers going across the Great Plains, have been driven by a search for resources.
Now, some big names are backing the project, including Google's Larry Page and Eric Schmidt. And if you heard space mining and instantly thought of Avatar, then you've guessed another investor. Here's director James Cameron.
Why does it have to be left up to impassioned individuals to do what governments used to do? You know, I mean, I fall into that category. I just get impatient. It's like, why aren't we exploring this stuff?
You'll recall that Cameron completed the world's deepest solo dive last month. Now, as for Planetary Resources, the company hopes to be off the ground by the end of next year. Come to you live from Hong Kong. You're back watching News Stream. Now, tensions between India and Pakistan appear to have subsided recently. Their nuclear ambitions have not. Now, just 5 days after New Delhi announced the successful launch of a missile capable of carrying nuclear warheads, the government in Islamabad has followed suit. Now, both missiles are ballistic, both are potentially devastating, but the key difference is range. While India's Agni 5 rocket can apparently travel up to 5,000 kilometers, Pakistan is staying silent on the potential scope of its Shaheen-1 model. A missile of the same type launched in 2010 hit a target 650 kilometers from its launch site. What we do know is that Pakistan advised not just India, but also Oman and Yemen of its intention to launch this missile. And authorities asked those countries to issue so-called notices to airmen, essentially warnings to commercial airlines and pilots to avoid flying over waters to the south of Pakistan. Oman lies fairly close to Pakistan across the Persian Gulf, but if Yemeni airspace lay within range, this indicates that a wide sweep of India did too, not just border regions that could have been potential targets of Pakistan's previous Shaheen-1 missile. Now, a senior figure in the Pakistani military says the country's latest missile will further consolidate and strengthen Pakistan's deterrence abilities. Let's go live now to Reza Sai for more on the implications of this launch. And Reza, will this test have an impact on Pakistan-India relations?
I don't think so, and I think that's very important to point out that despite this test firing, it will not impact Pakistan-India relations. There's absolutely no indication that there's a conflict emerging between these two nuclear rivals, absolutely no indications that relations are deteriorating. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Over the past year, there's been all sorts of signs that relations are improving. Both sides are talking after a lengthy freeze in relations following the Mumbai attacks in 2008. That said, these are two countries that love to use their military capabilities to flex their nuclear capabilities to flex their military muscles, and they usually do it with these ballistic test firings, this type of tit-for-tat we've seen for more than a decade now. It's a fact that when one country test fires a ballistic missile, you can be sure that within days, within a short period of time, the other country will do it as well, and that's what we saw here 5 days ago. As you mentioned earlier, India test fired a long-range missile, and today the Pakistani military announcing that they have test fired a mid-range missile, what they're describing as a new and improved version of their Shaheen-1 missile with a range capable of hitting anywhere in India, according to observers. In a brief statement, the military announcing that the test firing was a success and the missile landed in the sea, we're assuming somewhere in the Indian Ocean. And we should note that we didn't hear a response from India, certainly no condemnation, Christy, and that's a sign of how commonplace these ballistic test firings have become over the past decades between these two countries.
So the timing indicates that this was a tit-for-tat test firing. What more can you tell us, though, about Pakistan's missile arsenal? What does Pakistan have, and what are its missiles capable of doing?
Yeah, observers say they have about 70 to 90 nuclear warheads, most of them capable of hitting areas in India. The same observers say India has fewer missiles than Pakistan, but now they're saying India is designing its ballistic missiles to perhaps use it to make a show of force to China, the emerging power in the region as well. In fact, many observers saying that the long-range ballistic missile that was test-fired by India was designed to show force in China. But again, it doesn't matter what their intention is. When they do a test firing, Pakistan does one as well. But observers say if there's any example of two countries that have effectively used nuclear bombs as a deterrent, it's Pakistan and India, because ever since they went nuclear in 1998, they've never had a major war. These two countries have had 3 major wars, all of them before they went nuclear in 1998.
Reza Sai on the story. Thank you very much for that, Reza. Now, Pakistan and India, they may have been successful in their recent rocket launches, but North Korea was not. While Pyongyang denies its attempt was, in fact, a nuclear missile test, many of its detractors believe it still intends to test its nuclear strength. South Korean officials say that they have evidence the North is preparing for an atomic experiment in the same location where it says the North tested weapons in 2006 and 2009. On both occasions, Pyongyang was condemned by the UN Security Council. But earlier this week, a key member of the Council, China, reaffirmed its close ties with its long-term ally. Today was Army Day in the Democratic People's Republic, and state television showed viewers how the military opted to mark the occasion, apparently by shooting at and eventually destroying targets, including an effigy of South Korean President Lee Myung-bak.
Now, within a week, Pakistan and India have each tested ballistic missiles. We're going to take a look at how these nuclear neighbours are testing each other, what it could mean for efforts to thaw relations. It has successfully tested a medium-range ballistic missile. The new version of the Shaheen-1 is capable of hitting India with a nuclear warhead. Now, that launch, of course, comes less than a week after India test-fired its own long-range missile. Let's get more on how this could affect relations. Our Reza Sayar is at CNN Islamabad. Is this a signal to the Indians, who are well aware of Pakistan's capabilities, or a signal to their own people that they're able to keep up with the Joneses?
Well, Pakistan is never going to acknowledge this, Michael, but this test firing was no doubt a response to India's test firing of its ballistic missile 5 days ago. But it's important to point out that this test firing today should have no impact on Pakistan-India relations. There's absolutely no indication that there's a conflict brewing between these two nuclear nations, that relations are deteriorating. In fact, if you look at relations over the past year, they seem to be improving, with the countries meeting on several occasions, reviving peace talks. This after a lengthy freeze following the 2008 Mumbai attacks. That said, these are two countries that really love to use their nuclear capabilities to flex their military muscle. And if one country conducts a test firing a ballistic missile, you can be sure that the other country in a short amount of time is going to do the same. And that's what happened. 5 days ago, you had India test fire a long-range ballistic missile. And today, according to the Pakistani army, Pakistan test-fired a mid-range ballistic missile. In a brief statement, the Army said the test firing was a success. This was a new and improved version, the Army said, of the Shaheen-1 that is capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. The military said the missile landed somewhere in the sea. We're assuming they mean the Indian Ocean. And we should point out that there was no response, certainly no condemnation from India, Michael. And that really shows you how commonplace, how routine these test firings have been when it comes to India and Pakistan.
Yeah, and probably fair to say that India's test was more directed, if you like, as a show for China rather than Pakistan, whereas Pakistan's testing is very much a show for India, but also their own people, right?
Yeah, look, India doesn't need a long-range ballistic missile if it wanted to hit Pakistan. That's why many observers are convinced that their test firing was designed to be a show of force to China, a country that they're engaged in a rivalry with in Asia. But certainly whenever India test fires a ballistic missile, you can expect Pakistan is going to respond. And what we should point out is a lot of analysts say that if there's a case study of an effective use of nuclear capabilities, nuclear weapon as a deterrent, India and Pakistan are it. These two countries have fought 3 major wars. All of them were before 1998, when they both became nuclear capable. Since then, they haven't fought any major wars. And in fact, they've gone out of their way to be transparent about their intentions of using their capabilities of being deterrent. Once a year, they meet, they share information about their facilities. So all indications are that they're both on the same page in using their nuclear capability as a deterrent in a relationship.
All right, good to hear from you, Reza. Reza Sayar there in Islamabad. And Park strength. South Korean officials say they have evidence that the North is now preparing for an atomic experiment in the same location it says weapons were tested in 2006 and 2009. On both of those occasions, North Korea was roundly condemned by the United Nations Security Council.
Good morning and welcome to Mission Control Houston. We're inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room. This team is monitoring systems on board the space station and following along with activities of the crew. All the systems are functioning well on board the spacecraft, and the team is not working any issues at this time, just working through the scheduled activities for the day. The team is being led by Flight Director Ron Spencer. He's seen in the darker shirt at the Flight Director console, and next to him is the Capcom, or spacecraft communicator, astronaut Kjell Lindgren, who is serving as the interface between the mission control team and the crew on board the station. The crew members are working through the mid-afternoon of their day on board the complex. There are 6 crew members living and working aboard the space station. 3 of them are preparing to return to Earth after their 5.5-month mission. That includes 3 crew members on the left in this view. The crew includes Station Commander NASA astronaut Dan Burbank, who's seated, and his fellow cosmonauts Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin. They have been on board the station since mid-November. Then they were joined by these 3 crew members in December, astronaut Don Pettit and cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko and European Space Agency astronaut Andrei Kuipers. Those 3 crew members will be remaining on board the space station until July. The preparations to return to Earth include getting the Soyuz spacecraft ready that brought Burbank, Shkaplerov, and Ivanishin to the station, and packing up equipment that will be returned to Earth with the crew members. The cosmonauts completed an adjustment to one of the seat liners inside the Soyuz and are finishing up some additional packing today. Also completed use of the lower body negative pressure device that simulates gravity by pulling the body's fluids toward the feet that the cosmonauts used before returning to Earth. Shkaplerov and Ivanishin did that yesterday, and Kononenko is helping close out that equipment today. The crew members are also working on preparing for the next visiting vehicle to the station, the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft. SpaceX and NASA agreed that after SpaceX needed to delay from the targeted launch of April 30th, that May 7th would be the target launch date that they are working to now. So the crew members on board the space station are continuing to prepare for that vehicle's arrival at the station for its first demonstration flight of rendezvous and berthing to the complex. Another cargo vehicle is at the space station called the Automated Transfer Vehicle from the European Space Agency. It brought tons of cargo to the station and is also being used with its propellant on board and thrusters to reboost the space station periodically, and that was done this morning to prepare for the arrival of that Dragon vehicle and also the next Soyuz and crew, so that the space station is in the correct position in space for those visiting vehicles. The crew members are also working on some maintenance on board the space station. Astronauts Don Pettit and Dan Burbank are doing some maintenance of the waste and hygiene compartment, which is one of the toilet facilities on board the station. And Burbank participated in an experiment today while he was exercising on the treadmill. Is the biomechanical analysis of treadmill exercise on board the International Space Station. This experiment, called Treadmill Kinematics for short, is the first rigorous investigation to quantify the biomechanics of treadmill exercise conditions during long-duration spaceflight. Exercise prescriptions are developed under the assumption that walking and running in microgravity had the same training effects as during normal gravity. However, if locomotion kinematics and kinetics differ between microgravity and normal gravity, Understanding these mechanisms allows the development of better or appropriate exercise prescriptions to increase the exercise benefits to the crew members and their health and well-being while living on board the station. And with the 3 crew members leaving the station on Friday, there's a change of command ceremony this afternoon where Station Commander Dan Burbank will hand over command to Cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko to oversee Expedition 31, which officially begins when the Soyuz undocks from the station Friday.
What about all this wind, though? There's not going to be any flowers around left. You know, we had such a warm start to the, such a warm end to the winter and such a warm start to the spring. A lot of things were already in full bloom, but now with all of this wind that we're having across Western Europe, I don't think anything's going to stay on the trees much. And when you have a lot of leaves on the trees, they have a tendency to fall down a little bit quicker than when the trees are bare, like in the winter time. But this is a winter-like storm in the sense that it's very intense, but it's not as cold. These are what you're looking at over here is the winds, and across much of a northwestern corner of the continent. Dublin, 48-kilometer-per-hour wind, respectable there. 30-kilometer-per-hour winds in London. And look over here, as we head into France and northern Spain, that's where the strongest winds really are. Notice over here in Brest, as we head into Brittany, I've seen wind gusts over 100 kilometers per hour in the last 24 hours. Just remember yesterday, we had wind gusts over 120 kilometers per hour. So we're looking at hurricane-force winds along this area through the rest of the day today as this next weather system continues to move inland. And now the other thing to watch out for is going to be heavy rain across central and southern parts of the UK as we head into France and then all the way back over into Portugal and Spain. Very windy weather there as well. This is going to unfortunately continue with this weather system that I've been telling you. This one's already moved inland, and so what we have is the winds up to 100 kilometers per hour, and then the potential for some flooding, down trees, down power lines. So be extra careful. Expect significant travel delays. I think this is going to be something to have to deal with at least for another day or so. And there you see once again the windy conditions. I want to take you to southern parts of Europe, Monita, a site of a different kind, something that always leaves us amazed, and especially when they're able to capture it on film. I want to show you some images of Mount Etna. Look at that. Europe's most active volcano erupts for the 7th time so far this year. The pictures are absolutely amazing here. They had some strong winds across Sicily as well, and the ash has spread very quickly. The airports remain open so far. I do want to mention that as spectacular as these images are, people aren't getting too close, and there is no danger right now for the nearby communities, at least not from this latest eruption. It's really amazing anytime I see something like that. And that, by the way, as amazing as that eruption looks, is considered a minor, a weak eruption when it comes to the scale of volcanoes, but nevertheless quite breathtaking. Monita, back to you.
Bei Windböen von bis zu 140 Kilometern pro Stunde kam es zu gefährlichen Wackelpartien beim Landeanflug. Mancher Crewpilot, Cockpitpilot entschied sich deshalb lieber weiter durchzustarten. Für den gesamten Norden Spaniens gilt eine Unwetterwarnung. Die örtlichen Behörden forderten die Menschen auf, zu Hause zu bleiben.
Wir werden gleich Bilder sehen, liebe Zuschauerinnen und Zuschauer, genau, von Fliegern, da möchte man nicht wirklich drin sitzen. Schauen Sie mal. Sturmböen von 140 Stundenkilometern haben die Landung auf dem Flughafen von Bilbao im spanischen Baskenland zur Glückssache gemacht. Etliche Passagiermaschinen kamen beim Landeanflug gefährlich ins Schlingern. Ein paar Mal blieb den Piloten nichts anderes übrig, als durchzustarten und weiterzufliegen. Verantwortlich für die stürmischen Landebedingungen war das Sturmtief. Holla, die Waldfee.
Der Sturm hat auf dem Flughafen von Bilbao in Spanien die Piloten mehrerer Flugzeuge in große Schwierigkeiten gebracht. Videos zeigen, wie mehrere Landeanflüge beinahe in einer Katastrophe enden.
Bilder, die auch bei hartgesottenen Vielfliegern Flugangst auslösen. Die schwere Passagiermaschine wird im Landeanflug auf den Flughafen Bilbao hin und her geworfen. Erst in letzter Sekunde gelingt es dem Piloten, das Flugzeug unter Kontrolle zu bringen. Der Pilot der nachfolgenden Maschine versucht ebenfalls, bei Windgeschwindigkeiten von bis zu 140 Kilometern in der Stunde zu landen. Er schafft es nicht und startet im letzten Moment durch. Passagiere erzählen später, im Flugzeug habe Totenstille geherrscht. Schon den ganzen Tag hatte das Sturmtief Petra über dem Baskenland im Norden Spaniens gewütet. Die Behörden hatten die Menschen aufgerufen, zu Hause zu bleiben. Das Haus wurde richtig durchgerüttelt, die Fenster klirrten. Das ist doch langsam nicht mehr normal. Bei den riskanten Flugmanövern in Bilbao wurde übrigens niemand verletzt. Dennoch dürften alle Passagiere heilfroh gewesen sein, wieder festen Boden unter den Füßen zu haben.
Well, that's what a crosswind will do, and that's what a crosswind at 85 kilometers per hour will do. And that, imagine, was not even the strongest of the winds that we were gusting across portions of Western Europe. That was just the scariest visual interpretation of it. But take a look here in France as we were clocking winds literally of hurricane force, 119 kilometers per hour. That is the minimum threshold for an Atlantic hurricane here at Point du Raz, and we continue to see those wind gusts throughout the day. Of course, we're talking the western-facing coastlines here where we have the winds coming right off the water. Further inland, the winds not as gusty, not as dangerously gusty, but still rather strong. The rain also came along with the winds with rainfall tallies upwards of 100 millimeters here. Now, the winds are a bit calmer here, so I think we're going to be okay at the major airports. Really didn't have too many delays yesterday as the strongest wind stayed offshore, but it's still going to be a busy day, I think, for you. Check with your carrier if you're traveling, especially through Western Europe. The eastern side of Europe here is going to be not only rain-free, but we're going to be talking about a heat wave here over the next few days. Look at the absence of cloudiness, big ridge building here. But this is your storminess here. So, Nina, what you see is what you get. More rain, more gusty winds. That will continue through the remainder of the work week, which is almost done.
We're pretty used to it over here,
Yeah,
Ivan, I've got to tell you. Britain's not famous for its weather, is it? Many thanks for that there. Fierce winds are battering much of Western Europe. Meteorologist Mario Ramos is at the World Weather Centre with more details on that. And I heard that heavy rain and winds last night here in London.
Yeah, it was really windy in London, and we saw winds gusting just around that area, maybe up to about 60 kilometers per hour. So that's some pretty respectable wind gusts right there, Monita. And the rain, like you mentioned, quite heavy. Since Monday, across portions of Northwest Europe, we've had almost 100 millimeters of rain. So there in London, you were not alone. Most of the heaviest rain, of course, has been along this western side, but we've had very heavy rain across France and even some strong storms that have dumped extremely heavy rainfall, causing localized flooding, along with the storms, wind gusts that were in some cases up to hurricane force across many areas. And it's starting to ease up today, but it's still quite blustery outside. Not as bad as yesterday, and we'll start to see some improvements along the western fringes here of the continent. And then as that system marches on, it will get a little bit different. But of course, I was telling you about the travel delays, and I cannot get enough of this video, Monita. I know you've seen it already. Here it is again. This is a picture of the planes in Spain. Woo! Come on, straighten it out. You can do it. Look at that. Can you imagine? We were looking at the observations, that is so scary, of the airport in Bilbao around the time that these planes were landing, and what a rough landing. They were gusting to about 85 kilometers per hour. There it goes taking off. I cannot believe this airport was still open. Those are some really strong winds. I guess they have to take into account which way the wind is blowing as they try to do this, but those were some extremely dangerous conditions. There were travel delays. Here it goes again. Watch that. Oh my goodness, I have to hold my breath every time I see that, even though I know how it's going to end up. I cannot imagine how people on that aircraft felt. Very quickly, come back over to the weather map. The winds are starting to ease up somewhat across the region, as I was telling you, so figure the wind gusts are going to be about twice as much, maybe 60 kilometers per hour along the coast of France here, compared to 100 and something yesterday, so that's a big deal. This weather system will start marching across Central Europe, some strong storms expected with that, still the possibility of those strong winds affecting northwestern Europe, but ahead of that, quite the warm-up coming up here across central parts of Europe. Berlin, it's 18 already, on your way to the mid-20s by the end of the week. Monita, back to you, and those planes, so scary.
Oh, yeah, that was an amazing video there, amazing footage of that plane and those winds. Maury, thank you so much.
Yeah, Chrissy, this is something that's very important when these forecasts come out. You know, those of us that live in areas where there's hurricanes, we watch what the hurricane forecast is going to be. In India, they really pay a lot of attention to the monsoon season, and that is whether it's a southwest monsoon or the northeast monsoon, the dry and the wet season that really has shaped the country. And it's when they rely so much on agriculture in that country still, it's extremely important for people to rely on the weather and what it is going to do. So right now we're talking about the start of the rainy season. So far, this is from the India Met Office, they're saying that they're expecting near normal conditions. And that's very important. And they take a lot of things into account when they look at this. I was reading some of their stuff, and they were saying they take in snow cover over parts of Asia. They take in the temperature, the sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, also in the Indian Ocean into account. All of these things are factored in along with them. Of course, temperature differences in long-range forecasts to come up with what we have here, with what they're saying it's expected to be normal or near normal. When you think about other forecasts, for example, last year they were also saying it was going to be a near normal year, but we ended up having an above average season, slightly above average. They were almost right on the money, but it was slightly above average when it comes to the actual rainfall. And so when does the monsoon start? Well, if everything goes according to plan and Mother Nature keeps the clock where it normally should be, the average progression of the southwest monsoon kind of goes like this. It continues moving to the north, and we start to see the rains coming in around the first of the month here in the peninsular parts of India and into Sri Lanka until we get into July, and that's when we begin to see the monsoon pretty much covering the entire subcontinent and already moving into parts of Pakistan. So when until that happens, we're going to stay dry. We're going to stay maybe with a few scattered thunderstorms in the south and conditions relatively warm, 28 right now in New Delhi, and 33 in Kolkata. Look at Chiang Mai, looking at almost 30 degrees, quite warm across much of Southeast Asia. Bangkok, even this late, it's still at 33 degrees, 24 in Hong Kong. And the rain showers, again, are popping up here across parts of Southeast Asia and also moving up the coast there along eastern China. I want to take you to another part of the world. And have you seen this video, Christy? I know it's been everywhere, but I really can't get enough of it. Let's go ahead and roll the pictures from Bilbao, Spain. Wow! You know what? We've been talking about, I can't believe this. We've been talking about the thunderstorms, you said the big storm system across Western Europe, where Bilbao is actually on the north coast of Spain, just after you pass the Bay of Biscay and in the mountains. So it's normally quite windy here, but yesterday they were having winds that were gusting to nearly 100 kilometers per hour. So that was takeoff, and you're going to see the landing one more time because it is pretty impressive for the pilots to be able to do this. Here it goes again, watch. Straighten it out. There you go.
Oh, my God.
It's unbelievable. But anyway, 87 kilometer per hour wind gusts at the time those planes were landing. It's not going to be as windy today.
Mari, you laugh. I have sweaty palms. That is a white knuckle ride, and I'm going to have nightmares tonight, thanks to you. That is incredible. My goodness. We're almost there. Whew.
Analysts say activity at a North Korean remote test site indicates that Pyongyang may be preparing to conduct another nuclear test. Beijing says it opposes any new nuclear tests and has warned Pyongyang not to escalate tension in the region.
What we said is simple.
Wahlkampf als Jam-Session. Barack Obama fordert günstige Studentendarlehen. Und sein Freund, Late-Night-Star Jimmy Fallon, fordert die Jungwähler schon mal auf: Hört auf euren Präsidenten.
You should listen to the president.
Obama braucht die Jungwähler, wenn er sein Amt im November verteidigen will. Ohne sie wäre er nicht im Weißen Haus. Aber viele Amerikaner sind enttäuscht von der ersten Amtszeit des Präsidenten. Zu mitternächtlicher Stunde geht es natürlich auch um den Sexskandal im Secret Service. Was hält Obama von den Leibwächtern, die sich bei einer Dienstreise in Kolumbien mit Prostituierten vergnügten? Ein paar Dummköpfe dürfen nicht von der guten Arbeit des Secret Service ablenken. Keine Ahnung, was sie sich gedacht haben. Jedenfalls sind sie jetzt ihre Jobs los. Und wie findet Obama Mitt Romney, seinen republikanischen Herausforderer? Wir haben uns schon mal gesehen. Freunde sind wir nicht gerade. In so lockerer Umgebung darf man den mächtigsten Mann der Welt dann auch schon mal Preezy nennen. Es gibt sicher härtere Einsätze an der amerikanischen Wahlkampffront.
Und Barack Obama hatte seinen Humor bei dem ganzen Stress als Präsident verloren. Hat er nicht. Das bewies er als Überraschungsgast bei Late Night with Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah. Do you know Mitt Romney?
I've met him, but we're not friends.
Cool, oder? Der Präsident der Vereinigten Staaten.
the Preezy of the United Steezy.
Good morning and welcome to Mission Control Houston. We're inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room for today's ISS update. It's Thursday, April 26th, and the team is watching over systems aboard the station, and all is fairly quiet here as the crew members on board the space station are actually in a sleep shift, changing the schedule of operations on board the complex to get ready for the return of 3 of the crew members in their Soyuz spacecraft overnight. The crew members, all 6 of them, woke up about 1 a.m. Central Time this morning and then were scheduled to start their rest period or a nap about 8 a.m. Central Time. And then they are scheduled to get back to work about 2:30 p.m. Central Time all the way through 8 a.m. Friday morning. That includes the time frame when the 3 crew members will be getting into their Soyuz spacecraft and undocking from the station. Those crew members are the former commander of the station, Expedition 30's Commander Dan Burbank of NASA, seen seated in this view, and his Russian colleagues Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin. The 3 crew members have been living and working together on board the space station for about 5.5 months, since mid-November. They will be landing in the steppe of Kazakhstan early Friday morning U.S. time, about 6:45 a.m. Central Time. 3 crew members are remaining on board the space station to maintain operations. That includes NASA astronaut Don Pettit, cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko, and European Space Agency Andrei Kuipers. And now Kononenko is commander of the space station after a ceremonial handover by Burbank to Kononenko Wednesday afternoon. And Expedition 31 officially begins when the Soyuz spacecraft undocks overnight, and that undocking is scheduled at 3:18 a.m. Central Time Friday morning. The 3 crew members staying on board the space station have been there since late December and will remain until their return in July. They'll be joined by 3 additional crew members in mid-May. Those crew members are completing training activities in Star City, Russia, and preparing for their departure to the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on May 2nd. That crew includes cosmonaut Sergei Revin, Gennady Padalka, and NASA astronaut Joe Akaba, with their launch to the complex scheduled for May 14th U.S. time or 15th in Kazakhstan. After the crew members on board the space station have the rest period, they will get busy into the day's work of getting ready for the Soyuz undocking and departure. Some other activities on the schedule today include getting equipment ready for its transfer to the Dragon capsule for its return to Earth eventually. The SpaceX Dragon cargo mission is targeted for launch on May 7th and will deliver cargo to the station and also return equipment to Earth. And astronaut Andrei Kuipers is also working with a science experiment today called the VO2 Max, which is studying the effects of microgravity on the human body and the aerobic capacity specifically.